Have you ever tried to consult a medium? Were you scared at what you will discover? Did you even dare to ask one? Why? Maybe because you couldn't find an answer from the Lord. Remember the story of Shaul. The Lord would not talk to him, and so he bothered Samuel through a medium. Now, while the Lord can use evil diviners, but He never recommended us to go to such one to seek advice or to seek His will. He always asks us to go to the people that He officially sent, just like a prophet or a spiritual leader, pastor or teacher or a prophet from the Lord. Because coming before a medium whom the Lord has not appointed to be His spokesperson would be practically inviting demons to work in your lives. Because the next time that you would need His will, you would not hesitate to ask again for their advice. So in our story today, we will see how a wise woman would be able to face David and imitate a prophet to convince the king to get his son Absalom back to his house. And that would be one of the biggest mistakes that David would make in his life. Okay? So last week we talked about David loses two sons when Absalom murdered Amnon, the firstborn of David. And what happened? Absalom fled to his mother's home in the kingdom of Geshur, which is northeastern side of Israel, and he became a fugitive from Israel for murdering his brother Amnon, who abused his sister Tamar. So now we turn to 2 Samuel chapter 14. Remember, David was under God's punitive but corrective discipline for his covetousness, adultery, and murder. The sword has come upon the house of David. That's in chapter 12, verse 10, when Absalom murdered Amnon. But there is yet a prophecy that to be fulfilled. Chapter 12, verse 11 says, "Before your very eyes I will take your wives and give them to the one who is close to you, and he will sleep with your wives in broad daylight." That has yet to be fulfilled. And if you're David, you're probably scared when that day happens, right? But so far, this has not happened. And perhaps he was hoping that would not happen. So therefore, the discipline was not yet over. The trouble that Amnon and Absalom brought before his family was the culmination of the discipline of God on his household. So the king had to be cognizant about the prophetic word against him. So the title of our message for today is David Allows Trouble to Come Home, because this is the story when Absalom would be able to return to Jerusalem. What can we expect and learn for this evening? As David's emotions subsided and he put away imposing justice on Absalom for killing his brother Amnon, the enemy took advantage of David to have his fugitive son back to his house without punishing him. So, when we are under God's corrective discipline, just like David was, the enemy will try to make us fail further and fall harder. And so, things would be getting worse for David in this case. So, I have 3 points to share from this chapter on how David became weaker. Letter A, conflicted David listens to a deceiver. So we'll be discussing verses 1 to 17. As the Lord sent Nathan, used the story to convict David and pronounce his judgment on him, Joab sent a woman from Tekoa to talk like a prophet to get Absalom back to David's house. Now, why did Joab do that? Let's look at the last verse of chapter 13, which will connect us to chapter 14, verse 1. And King David longed to go to Absalom, for he was consoled concerning Amnon's death. So that's what we mean by his emotions have subsided, his anger. In chapter 14, verse 1 says, Joab, son of Zeruiah, remember he is the chief of his army, knew that the king's heart longed for Absalom. Right from the beginning, the author shows how Joab, David's nephew, was concerned about the king's emotional state. Maybe David kept talking about him. As verse 39 says, he wanted to go to Absalom to Geshur. Now, he didn't say he wanted Absalom back. What made David hesitant to go to Geshur? Maybe it will cause further trouble if he himself will go to Geshur just to see his son Absalom. We still have no word about the second son, Chil'av. Throughout the story, it seems that David was not looking forward to bringing Absalom back to Jerusalem because he knew that he has to impose justice upon him for killing his firstborn son Amnon. Now, it only seems that he has set aside justice. All right? Now, was the king longing for Absalom because he was his son or because he had plans for his runaway son? We don't know. So remember, Absalom was the son of the king of Israel and the daughter of the king of Geshur. So let's go to the actual story, verse 2. So Joab sent someone to Tekoa and had a wise woman brought from there. He said to her, "Pretend you are in mourning. Dress in mourning clothes and don't use any cosmetic lotions. Act like a woman who has spent many days grieving for the dead. Then go to the king and speak these words to him. And Joab put the words in her mouth. So rather than asking Nathan for a word from the Lord, Joab, on his own initiative, desiring to please the king, maybe for his own benefit, sought for a wise woman from Tekoa, which was a southern town from Jerusalem, still within Yehuda. Now, in the ancient times, women are known to be diviners. Remember the medium of Endor? Shaul went to her. Now, do you remember the Oracle of Delphi in Greece? We've been there last year. An oracle must be a virgin woman, okay, and no man. So they are known to be diviners. So instead of God giving prophetic word to the woman, Joab gave the word to the woman from Tekoa. All right? So it's like Joab was acting like God. The woman was not asked to act like a medium, but a widow. But since she was a wise woman, she knew how to act that way. Verse 4, when the woman from Tekoa went to the king, she fell with her face to the ground to pay honor. And she said, "Help me, your majesty." The king asked her, "What is troubling you?" She said, "I'm a widow. My husband is dead. I, your servant, had 2 sons. They got into a fight with each other in the field, and no one was there to separate them. One struck the other and killed him." So the woman got her opportunity to plead her case to the king. Maybe there was a long line of people asking for the king's advice or for his justice. Remember, the king wasn't only a ruler, he also acted like a judge. Just like in the previous cases, they were judges but not kings. But David acted both a judge and a king. So remember, Shlomo also acted like a king, and he was so famous about the judgment he made about 2 women fighting over a baby, right? So as a pretender, the woman gave him her story. As Nathan delivered the message from the Lord to David through a story, the woman made it more realistic by being the victim in the invented story. She would use this to relate to David's own story. We'll find out in the next few verses. Well, of course, David had to listen to her. David, as a judge, was interested in the woman's case. Okay? Now, ironically, David wanted to bring justice for her, but in his own case, in his own family, he would not do so. Well, anyway, Absalom was far and away. Okay? So the similarity of her story with David's story was that a son killed his brother. Okay? Now, maybe at this time, it reminded him of his own troubles in his own family. Maybe it triggered him. Verse 7, now the whole clan has risen up against your servant, they say. Hand over the one who struck his brother down, so that we may put him to death for the life of his brother whom he killed. Then we will get rid of the heir as well. Well, that was tough. That was a hard situation to be in. They would put out the only burning coal I have left, leaving my husband neither name nor descendant on the face of the earth. So she would run out of any family or relative. Okay? The king said to the woman, go home and I will issue an order in your behalf. So this might be the similar thing to David's situation. Ahinoam, the mother of Amnon, was probably asking David for justice for what Absalom did. And remember, Absalom was the son of Maacah. And Maacah was the daughter of Talmai from Geshur. Okay? So they have 2 different mothers. So imagine how the side of Ahinoam were fighting the side of Maacah. Well, probably Maacah was back in Geshur, so that's why they could not face off. Okay? But they were asking probably for justice. But since Absalom has gone, they couldn't get any. Being a widow, the woman had no defender. He had no husband anymore and no other son. Okay. And of course, she didn't want to surrender her only son because that would be the worst case for her. So the conflict is within her own house. Her family was in danger of being wiped out. Okay. Now, that may not be the case in David's family because he had so many other sons. He had so many other wives. So he may not have suspected that this woman was actually referring to his very story. But there are similarities. So as a judge, David rightfully gave protection to the woman. He said, go home and I will issue an order on your behalf. Don't worry about it. Again, he failed to do this for his own family. Well, because he had other sons who could be the new firstborn after the death of Amnon. But we are not told who was that new firstborn. Verse 9, but the woman from Tekoa said to him, let my lord the king pardon me and my family, and let the king and his throne be without guilt. So what is going on here? The king replied, if anyone says anything to you, bring them to me, and they will not bother you again. So he got the backing of the king. Imagine, the highest authority has her back. The woman was very successful on her first step. But since that was not a real story, she had another agenda. She had to take the second step. Okay? So she took the risk of asking for another favor from the king. So she's going to her second step. So David gave her the opportunity to be protected. Having pity on the woman, David promised more favors for her. Okay? It's not only that you get a protection, if anyone tries to harm you, I will bring justice to them. Verse 11, she said, then let the king invoke the Yahweh, his Elohim, to prevent the avenger of blood from adding to the destruction so that my son will not be destroyed. Even though her son was a criminal, okay, in that case, because he killed his brother. Well, it was set up in a sense that it can be a case of self-defense. Okay? As surely as the Yahweh lives, he said, David, not one hair of your son's head will fall to the ground. So she asked the king to make his word not just his own word, but the word of God. She was asking that David invoke Yahweh, not just his own authority as king. Now, sensing nothing wrong with it, David said, sure, I will invoke the name of Yahweh as surely as the Yahweh lives. Okay? Verse 12, then the woman said, let your servant speak a word to my lord the king. Speak, he replied. So she wasn't done with her case. Trying to get to her ultimate goal of sending a message to the king, which Joab wanted actually to convey through her, the woman asked for a third favor. So third time, the woman said, why then have you devised a thing like this against the people of Elohim? When the king says this, does he not convict himself? Whoa, those were strong words against the king. For the king has not brought back his banished son. Why is she getting into David's own troubles? We thought that she went there because she was bringing her case. Why is she meddling with David's own affairs? Right? Verse 14, like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be recovered, so we must die. And that is not what Elohim desires. Rather, he devises ways so that a banished person does not remain banished from him. Okay, the woman has spoken like a prophet here by daring to judge the king in the name of God. You see there, against the people of Elohim. She was invoking Elohim, God. She didn't say Yahweh, but she said Elohim. He dared to judge the king in the name of God by addressing the injustice against Absalom rather than injustice against Amnon. So what has become here is that Absalom was the victim instead of Amnon. Right? It's weird. The woman has spoken lies in the name of Elohim. Again, she didn't invoke the name of Yahweh, though they're just the same. Okay? So she made David see that Absalom was the victim. She tried to convince the king that it was Elohim's will that Absalom be brought back to him. Look at what verse 14 says. But that is not what Elohim desires. She's speaking like a prophet. He devises ways so that a banished person does not remain banished from him. She's appealing for Absalom. So why is she meddling into David's own affairs? Because she's trying to act like a prophet. She was imitating Nathan by communicating a story and then getting into the message. Okay? Verse 15. And now I have come to say this to my lord the king because the people have made me afraid. She goes back to her own story. The people have made her afraid. Your servant thought, I will speak to the king. Perhaps he will grant his servant's request. That's her request. Perhaps the king will agree to deliver his servant from the hand of the man who is trying to cut off both me and my son from Elohim's inheritance. And remember, this is just a made-up story. She's sticking with her story. So it's like she's addressing the problem within the family of David, but she's saying, I still have this problem. And now your servant says, may the word of my lord the king secure my inheritance. For my lord the king is like an angel of Elohim in discerning good and evil. So she praises him. May the Yahweh your Elohim be with you. So what's going on here? The woman immediately saves herself by putting the blame on the people who forced her to come to David and appeal her case. And it's like she's saying, I have this case, but I'm also taking advantage of my case to help the king. She's being nice to the king, but she still had the problem. So that David would not suspect that he didn't have to act on her problem. She still had that problem. So she explained herself why she dared to speak to the king. The pressure was so intense. The people have made me afraid. Verse 15. So the woman never said that her story was fake. Okay, she stood by it. She still asked the king to keep his word he promised to her. How about in verse 17? Look what the woman did. It's like having hostage the king with his word. You gave me your word earlier. She forced David to fulfill his word for her, while at the same time, she was patronizing him. Did you see that? For my lord the king is like an angel of Elohim. So that David would not get angry with her for actually getting into his private affairs. Well, actually, the family of David is not a private affair anymore because they were public personalities. Okay? Like an angel of Elohim in discerning good and evil. So she was saying, I'm confident with your judgment. Okay? You're not to be blamed here. You're a good man. Okay? Then she blessed him in the name of Yahweh. Finally, she invoked Yahweh so that it will be well for both her and for David. Okay? So that's our first lesson. Okay? Conflicted David listens to a deceiver. Well, that's the problem. David may have laid down his guard on the problem with Absalom since a couple of years have passed since that problem occurred. So it is understandable why he missed him, but he knew he could not bring his son back to Yehuda. Okay? He could only visit him in Geshur. Perhaps he could secure some safety pass so that he can see his son. But see, David was conflicted here. But because of that, this provided the enemy to send a deceiver to him, and he listened to her. And that's the bad thing about this story. Okay? Unwise David fails to act on discernment. Verses 18 to 24. Even though David found out that the woman was not sent by the Lord, he listened to her advice and gave Joab favor. Why did David do that? Okay? Verse 18. Then the king said to the woman, don't keep from me the answer what I'm going to ask you. Let my lord the king speak, the woman said. The king asked, isn't the hand of Joab with you in all this? So that's why we said in letter B, unwise David fails to act on discernment. David discerned that the woman was not really a prophet, that she was a messenger of Joab. So finally, David sensed that there was something wrong with the woman because again, she got herself involved in his family affairs. So imagine how scared the woman was when David asked her, don't keep from me the answer what I'm going to ask you. Answer me this question. So she said, sure, my lord. Now, he may have sensed that the hand of Joab was involved in this situation. He probably has expressed to Joab before that he was longing for Absalom, and that's what verse 1 says in chapter 14. So he was maybe planning to go to Geshur to see Absalom, but he hasn't done yet. So let's continue with verse 19. The woman answered, as surely as you live, my lord the king, no one can turn to the right or to the left from anything my lord the king says. So you have absolute authority. If whatever you say has to be done. Yes, it was your servant Joab who instructed me to do this and put all these words into the mouth of your servant. She was busted and she had to admit it. Your servant Joab did this to change the present situation. There's good intention about this. My Lord has wisdom like that of an angel of Elohim. That's why you were able to discern that this was all the plan of Joab. He knows everything that happens in the land. So the woman had no choice but to admit that Joab ordered her to plead her case to him and think about getting back Absalom to Jerusalem. And because he was yearning for Absalom, it just only took some pushing from a woman, a wise woman, so that he could decide, yes, let Absalom come back to him. Right? So, though she admitted that this was the plan of Joab, she did not put Joab in trouble. He had all good intentions to help him. She repeated that David was like an angel of Elohim. Perhaps this was also Joab's technique for the woman to escape trouble when David finds out that Joab was really behind all of this. Verse 21, the king said, Joab, very well, I will do it. Go, bring back the young man Absalom. So finally, Joab faced David. He had to admit, I'm behind this. Joab fell with his face to the ground to pay him honor, and he blessed the king. Joab said, today your servant knows that he has found favor in your eyes. You haven't condemned me for doing this. My lord the king, because the king has granted his servant's request. Was actually his request for Joab to pick up Absalom from Geshur and bring him to Jerusalem. So finally, Joab faced the king and he humbled himself before him, which was the right thing to do, being caught that this was all his plan. Without inquiring of the Lord, this was the problem, and having invoked the Lord's name, David agreed to have Absalom back to him. He had to fulfill his promise. So, was David pleased that they all agreed on this? And even invoking the name of the Lord? Perhaps he was. You know, when you're entertaining a thought and somebody agrees with you, you get happy. Whatever hesitation that you have, since somebody helped you out, all of those concerns are gone because you were reinforced by someone else. You understand what I'm saying? The problem is, he did not seek for the Lord's favor or for the Lord's advice in this matter because he still had to bring justice for the death of his firstborn Amnon. And by letting him come back, he's giving him a free pass from any punishment that he deserved, or a trial first that should be the case. So this is the time what we're saying, that David was a very conflicted person. But the other side of him, longing to see Absalom, prevailed. Okay? So in this case, we see that Joab succeeded in his plan. Verse 23, Then Joab went to Geshur and brought Absalom back to Jerusalem. But the king said, he must go to his own house. He must not see my face. So Absalom went to his own house and did not see the face of the king. So imagine how surprised Absalom was. Joab coming to him to pick him up. Maybe he was thinking, is this true? Is this a trick? Or did the king really have a change of heart about me? Okay. So when Joab, of course, gave him his word, probably Absalom was relieved to go back home. So since he would be getting away from any punishment, he didn't have to be a fugitive anymore. And he had the clearance to go back since Joab himself was the one escorting him. He had a free pass, okay? A safety pass. Moreover, imagine how happy he was knowing that the king was thinking about him. Right? You see, he didn't ask to be returned. Okay? The initiative came from someone else. Maybe Joab, we don't know. Joab said, the king wanted you back. The initiative came from Yehuda. It didn't come from Geshur. So that must be a very big surprise for him. The punishment David imposed on Absalom by not seeing his face was actually not enough to penalize Absalom. Not enough, because he committed a murder and he should be killed for that sin. But that was the worst punishment that David could give to his son, because that was his son. It was painful for him to have his son be executed, right? It did not deal with the crime of murder by not just seeing his face. Okay? So having no privilege as a son, Absalom had to rebuild his life by himself rather than having the advantage of building from the household of David. But that gave him an opportunity to build his name the way he wanted to be known. And that is what the next verses will tell us. All right? So, unwise David fails to act on discernment. He discerned that this was not a messenger from the Lord, the woman. Without inquiring of the Lord, David listened to the wise woman and to Joab to have Absalom back. He gave him a safety pass. He was not to be tried for the murder of Amnon. Implicitly, he commanded the family of Ahinoam not to touch Absalom. Now, that must be very painful on the family of Ahinoam. David made this move without the Lord's approval. He was bringing trouble on himself, on his own house. And we'll see the consequences of that in the next chapters. Third lesson, insecure David welcomes a shrewd son. Okay. Verses 25 to 33. As Absalom returned to Jerusalem, he strengthened himself and pressured his father to accept him once more. So he's really positioning himself to be the next king of Israel. Verse 25, in all Israel, there was not a man so highly praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. From the top of his head to the sole of his foot, there was no blemish in him. Whenever he cut the hair of his head, he used to cut his hair once a year because it became too heavy for him. He would weight it, and its weight was 200 shekels by royal standard. Okay? Remember, there was a time it was cool for men to have long hair. Not only in the US, but also in the Philippines. Perhaps in the 80s and 90s. You would look like a rock and roll star if you have very long hair. Remember those times? Okay. So the author explains the physical advantage of Absalom here. And Absalom took advantage of that, being so handsome. Just like his father during his youthful days. So a handsome father begets a handsome son. So Absalom's thick hair made him look like Samson in the peak of his strength, right? Absalom had so much hair that it seemed he had so much favor. Now, why do people in those days think that way? I don't really know. I really don't know. Okay? Verse 27. 3 sons and a daughter were born to Absalom. His daughter's name was Tamar, and she became a beautiful woman. So, favors were coming to his family, naturally. Okay? Absalom lived 2 years in Jerusalem without seeing the king's face. Then Absalom sent for Joab in order to send him to the king. But Joab refused to come to him. So he sent a second time, but he refused to come. So again, what's happening here? So having sons, which was a good thing, Absalom looked like his family was becoming stronger. Now, it is probable that his 3 sons were born, and including the daughter, to him maybe before his exile, or maybe in Geshur. We're not sure. But he only stayed a couple of years in Geshur, and he didn't see his father's face for a couple of years. So probably these 3 sons were also born to him while he was still living in Jerusalem before all the trouble happened. Okay? Naming his daughter after her shamed sister was a sign that the people should not forget her beautiful sister, Tamar. So that was a way to honor her sister. Absalom tried to use Joab. That's what you find in verse 29. Okay? He tried to use Joab because he wanted to see the king. Perhaps he wanted to brag about himself. I made it. You made me come here, but you didn't want to see me. But I made it. I have a very beautiful family. I'm very successful. Okay? Since Absalom tried to use Joab, Joab may have sensed that Absalom was becoming a dangerous man. Right? This time we don't know who would be the next firstborn. Perhaps David has postponed announcing who would be the new firstborn. So Joab refused to get involved in this, so he refused to see him, to serve Absalom. Enough was the favor that he gave him by picking him up from Geshur and bringing him back to Jerusalem. Now, perhaps Absalom knew that Joab was instrumental to his return to Jerusalem, so he was thinking, maybe I can get another favor through Joab. Verse 30, then he said to his servants, look, Joab's field is next to mine, and he has barley there. Go, set it on fire. He's trying to get the attention of Joab. So Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Then Joab did go to Absalom's house, and he said to him, why have your servants set my field on fire? So finally, he gets to meet Absalom. Now, we see how cunning Absalom was here. He found a way to force Joab to meet him by burning his field. Okay? So Joab was very angry at Absalom. All he did to him was favor, and this is what he get in return. Remember, they were cousins. They were cousins. Joab was the nephew of David, and so Absalom was his cousin. Verse 32, Absalom said to Joab, look, I have sent word to you and said, come here so that I can send you to the king to ask, why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me if I were still there. Now then, I want to see the king's face, and if I'm guilty of anything, let him put me to death. So Absalom wanted to be clear that he's been cleared of all the crime, of the only crime actually he committed against Amnon. So Joab went to the king and told him this. Then the king summoned Absalom, and he came in and bowed down with his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. What you see here is that Absalom put Joab in a corner. Okay? He forced him into this situation. He demanded Joab to let him see the king. That's a small favor to ask. You didn't have to take me to burn your field in order just to get this, but at least I got your attention. So perhaps Absalom wanted to be treated as a son again by wanting to see him, knowing that there was no competition. There was a vacancy in the firstborn. Since we haven't heard from the second one in line, Kilab, David hasn't declared him to be the next firstborn, even though he's next in line. We don't know what happened to Kilab at this time. We're not sure if he was unwilling or maybe he was a weak man. But Absalom was taking advantage among his brothers to be the next firstborn. So when he faced the king, Absalom still humbled himself. He bowed down to the ground before the king. And he was waiting what the king would do to him. And what did the king do? He accepted him. The verse said, the king kissed Absalom. So this was a greeting that he's been accepted. You remember the story of the prodigal son. When the prodigal came back, his father kissed him. He kissed him like a son again. Okay? So imagine what Absalom felt. Everything is well. The kiss put everything to rest. He's a son again. Was that part of Absalom's plan? You see, there's one condition. If I'm not accepted by the king, if he doesn't want to see my face, I better go back to Geshur. Because I'm wasting my time here. Right? Insecure David welcomes a shrewd son. Conflicted David, wanting to see his son, we remember that in chapter 14 verse 1, but refused to see him when he brought him back to his city in the last part of the story. Conflicted David became insecure David. Absalom has grown in power and in favor. He had sons and a beautiful daughter. He allowed his son to escape justice from his crime. He didn't try to put him to trial. He also opened the door for his son to do whatever he planned to do. And he got the king to accept him. Otherwise, he'll be banished forever. Right? So David allows trouble to come home. Letter A, conflicted David listens to a deceiver. That was bad. Letter B, unwise David fails to act on discernment. He did worse. He only not listened to the woman, but he agreed to have Absalom back. And letter C, insecure David welcomes a shrewd son. He was conflicted. He accepted him, but he didn't want to see him. So maybe it was to comfort him. Well, Absalom is just nearby. If I wanted to see him, I can just call him anytime. Okay? Now, talk about letter A. When you are conflicted between relationships, okay, but your son, of course, did something wrong, and righteousness, relationships versus righteousness, do not lose your moral compass. Because your moral compass will guide you in making the right decisions, even at the cost of relationship. Moral compass is higher than relationships. If someone did wrong, you should surrender to the authorities, even though it's very painful. Otherwise, you would make things worse for yourself and for your erring son. And that's what happened in the case of David. How about letter B? Otherwise, David fails to act on discernment. When you know that you are facing a deceiver, quickly reject that person. Don't listen to the advice. They always put before you the good benefits and cover the bad consequences. You see that? And so David acceded to their request to have Absalom back to him. And finally, letter C, when you see evil getting stronger, well, I'm picturing Absalom as the evil person here, they will put themselves in a good position to overcome you. That is the story in our next lesson in chapter 15. Okay? When Absalom would dethrone temporarily David from his seat as king of Israel. Okay? You gotta beware. Did David entertain the thought that Absalom could be his successor? That's why he accepted him? By being so strong and influential? Maybe that was the temptation David had to face. Maybe I have to accept that Absalom would be the next king. But he was an unrighteous person. See that? So I hope that we stick to righteousness, even at the cost of relationships.